In 2023, a panel that dictates guidelines for teaching reproductive health at public schools in Godley, Texas, discovered that one of its members was an escort who had been busted twice for selling her services. Up until that point, the School Health Advisory Council had no knowledge or suspicions of 38-year-old Ashley Ketcherside's side hustle. They were shocked to learn that she was advertising her companionship as a true girl next door named Lola Bria online, along with scantily clad photos. Members of the panel became suspicious of Ketcherside when she claimed to own multiple businesses that didn't seem to really exist. She never shared any specific information about the supposed businesses, prompting her fellow council members to do their own digging. In addition to her role on the health advisory panel, Ketcherside was a member of several other district panels, including the Parent-Teacher Organization and the Family and Community Engagement Committee. She had joined these groups after moving to the area just months earlier, and the people she volunteered with thought of her as friendly and likable. But their opinions changed after they discovered her chosen profession, and she was promptly removed from all the committees she had been a part of. And while it's not illegal to sell time or companionship in Texas, Ketcherside had a proven history of exchanging physical acts for money, which is against the law. A school district spokesperson told Fox 4 that Ketcherside had been background checked prior to joining any of the groups and blamed the Texas Department of Public Safety for failing to notify them of her prior convictions. The representative further explained that Ketcherside wasn't an official member of the Health Advisory Council, even though she was listed as a member on its website and could be seen in videos of the group's meetings. Ketcherside continues to maintain a large online presence and appears to still be working as an escort. Number 15. Edward and Elizabeth Stevenson. In July of 2024, the Putnam County Sheriff's Office in Tennessee executed a search warrant at the home of 60-year-old Edward Stevenson and his wife, 51-year-old Elizabeth. The couple had fallen under investigation for suspected drug trafficking through undercover drug buys, which were carried out as part of law enforcement's efforts to take down a massive drug ring in the area. During the raid, law enforcement recovered guns, body armor, ammunition, fentanyl, and 3/4 pound of methamphetamine. The Stevensons weren't home at the time of the search. Authorities had received intelligence that they were transporting drugs through Texas in a semi-truck and that they were armed. Additionally, the couple had both previously made troubling statements about how they would rather die than be captured by the police, which meant that capturing them would require a carefully planned approach. Putnam County detectives contacted the Donley County Sheriff's Office and Texas Department of Public Safety, and the agencies began a coordinated effort to apprehend Edward and Elizabeth. When Donley County deputies attempted to pull the couple's semi-truck over, Edward refused to stop and led the cops on a several-mile chase. He eventually stopped the truck, and he and Elizabeth exited the vehicle and immediately began shooting at the cops. By then, members of several law enforcement agencies had joined the pursuit. Deputies and troopers returned fire, and the Stevensons were killed at the scene. Inside the truck, the police found roughly 64 pounds of cocaine, with an estimated street value of $3.4 million. Knowing it would have most likely been mixed with fentanyl, the Putnam County Sheriff's Office said in a statement that the seizure most likely saved lives. Number 14. Arti Dir and Kavaljitsin Rajada. Indian-British couple Arti Dir and Kavaljitsin Rajada first made international news headlines in early 2020 when they were accused of arranging the murder of their adopted son for insurance money 3 years earlier. They had adopted the boy, Gopal, from India in 2015, promising him a better life in London. In 2017, he was abducted and killed in Gujarat by men on motorbikes. Dir had taken a nearly $200,000 life insurance policy out in Gopal's name, leading to the suspicion that she and Rajada had hired hitmen to kill him so they could collect the payout. A British judge blocked the Indian government's request to extradite the couple to Gujarat to face trial on 6 charges, including kidnapping and conspiracy to murder, noting that an extradition would violate the defendants' human rights because they could face life in prison without parole if they were found guilty. Indian officials appealed the decision, but the British High Court upheld the ruling. In June of 2021, Dir and Rajada were arrested for running a drug trafficking organization that reportedly shipped more than 7 tons of cocaine to Australia, where the drug's street value is substantially higher than in Britain. They used their freight company as a front for the scheme and relied on knowledge gleaned from their previous employment at Heathrow to carry out their crimes in a way that seemed legitimate. Deer and Rajada fell under suspicion after Australian authorities intercepted one of their illicit packages containing more than $75 million worth of cocaine. During a search of the couple's storage unit, safe deposit box, and their flat in London, police recovered nearly $4 million in cash and a collection of gold-plated silver bars. It was evident, based on Deer and Rajada's wealth and assets, including their home, an $80,000 Land Rover, and 22 bank accounts, that they were profiting immensely from their illegal activities. In January of 2024, the pair were found guilty of 18 counts of money laundering and 12 counts of extortion. They were sentenced to 33 years in prison. Number 13. Frederick Hobson. In May of 2023, a man woke up in his hotel room in Miami Beach to find that more than $32,000 of his valuables had been stolen, including a $18,000 Rolex watch, a gold chain, a camera, and a Louis Vuitton satchel. A woman he had been spending time with had fled the scene while he was asleep. The victim told police that he had met the woman, 25-year-old Alison Maza, on Instagram. On the day of the robbery, he picked her up at a Motel 6 in Dania Beach and drove her to his hotel to hang out. Police arrested Maza during a traffic stop more than a year later in July of 2024. She initially denied any knowledge of the theft but was reportedly wearing the stolen Rolex. Maza was arrested on suspicion of grand theft, and the current status of the case is unclear. Number 12. Moira Robertson and Helen Wright. In June of 2019, police in Glasgow, Scotland, raided the Ballystone home of 65-year-old Moira Robertson, where they found more than $67,000 in cash and more than a pound of cocaine, with an estimated street value of more than $28,000. Robertson's friend, 67-year-old Helen Wright, showed up at the residence during the bust and was caught with $3,700 worth of cocaine in her possession. Robertson reportedly told investigators that she got involved in smuggling cocaine to repay her son's drug debts. She recruited Wright, whose home was used to store money. Both women were arrested on drug charges. Robertson claimed that she received no financial incentive for her activities and that she was unaware that significant amounts of drugs and money would be involved. Her defense attorney even complained about how her legitimate savings were seized, along with the drug money. The women pleaded guilty to 1 count of being concerned in the supply of cocaine. Robertson was sentenced to 20 months in prison, while Wright received an 18-month term. Perhaps not surprisingly, the judge did not believe that Robertson was as ignorant to the scheme as she claimed, noting during her sentencing hearing that she committed her crimes with a full awareness of what she was doing. The judge also refused to spare Wright from prison time, pointed out that her actions had crossed the custody threshold and that he could not find any exceptional circumstances warranting leniency. Number 11. Idris Abdul Muhammed. 73-year-old Owen Dillard was found stabbed to death in his apartment in the Bronx neighborhood of Mott Haven in June of 2018. The senior citizen, who was battling cancer at the time of his death and had recently won $50,000 in the lottery, had been robbed and killed by his own nephew, 45-year-old Idris Abdul Muhammed, who fled the scene with just a few dollars. Muhammed was still on the run nearly a month later when he stabbed 45-year-old family friend Wanda Rios to death with a screwdriver at her job as a security guard. He fled the scene with some stolen electronic equipment and was apprehended 10 hours later after members of the public recognized him in security footage that the NYPD had released in an effort to find him. This wasn't Muhammed's first time being accused of killing someone. He had been convicted of murder back in 1991 after shooting someone in the head at the age of 19. Muhammed served 20 years in prison for the crime. According to his family, he was drowning in gambling debts when he killed Dillard and Rios. he pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree manslaughter in early 2022 and was sentenced to 24 years in prison. Number 10. Florinda Sultana and Albert Buttigieg. In 2021, Maltese authorities arrested 29-year-old Florinda Sultana and former bank executive Albert Buttigieg as part of a crackdown on the illegal oil trade. The pair are accused of participating in a $33 million fuel smuggling racket, with suspicious links to several restaurants owned by Sultana's stepfather, businessman and former footballer Darren DeBono. Sultana and Buttigieg pleaded not guilty to money laundering and other financial crimes, and the case was bound over for trial. The court froze their assets and placed a strict limit on the amount of money the defendants are allowed to withdraw from their bank accounts. Despite being restricted to a little over $1,300 per month in withdrawals, Sultana has still been seen traveling the world and living a luxurious lifestyle, raising suspicions that money was still being moved amid her and Buttigieg's ongoing legal case. Prosecutors are accusing the pair of using 2 of DeBono's seafood restaurants as fronts for their laundering activities, but have reportedly failed to procure records of the suspected illegal transactions or even the amount of money they believe the defendants have laundered. According to the most recent available updates, Sultana's attorneys are trying to persuade the court to ease up on her financial restrictions while raising questions about how to move forward in light of newly imposed legal amendments regarding the prosecution of high-profile money laundering cases. Number 9. Malik Halfakra. In March of 2021, a 25-year-old Indianapolis man named Malik Halfakra got into an argument with the mother of his child because he wanted a portion of her COVID-19 stimulus check. Janitris Moore had an order of protection against Halfakra due to past violence, which had caused her to fear for her life, but Halfakra ignored the order and went to her home. When Moore refused to share the relief money, Halfakra began digging through her purse for the check. He proceeded to open fire on the woman and her family, shooting Janitrius, her 23-year-old brother, Daquan, her 44-year-old mother, Tomika Brown, her 35-year-old cousin, Anthony Johnson, and her daughter, Eve. Moore managed to make it to a neighbor's house despite her injuries, and the police were called. In the meantime, Halfakra fled the scene in Janitrius's car with their young child. Janitrius was the only victim to survive the shooting. Her and Halfakra's daughter were found safe later that night, and Halfakra was arrested at a friend's house the next day following an hour-long standoff with law enforcement. He admitted to the shooting during questioning and was charged with 4 counts of murder. Halfakra had a violent history which included a conviction for shooting another man multiple times in 2017. He served just a few months in prison after pleading down to a lesser charge, and Janitrius had reportedly grown afraid to end their relationship because she did not trust the legal system to keep her safe. In July of 2024, Halfakra pleaded guilty to the murder charges in order to avoid the death penalty and was sentenced to 145 years in prison, ensuring that he'll remain behind bars for the rest of his life. Number 8. Quenisha Manago. In early 2023, the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office in North Carolina received a tip about a parcel of cocaine that was en route to a residence in Kershaw from another country. Various law enforcement agencies worked together to intercept the package before it reached its destination. In it, they found 2 bricks of compressed powder weighing over 6.5 pounds combined, with an estimated street value of over $180,000. After testing the substance and confirming that it was cocaine, agents from federal, state, and county law enforcement agencies carried out a controlled delivery. This meant that the drop-off was carried out by a member of law enforcement, posing as a postal carrier while other agents monitored the interaction from nearby. According to authorities, 28-year-old Quenisha Lachey Manago accepted the package, which was addressed to her from the undercover delivery person, and placed it in the back seat of a Ford sedan. As she and another woman prepared to leave in the car, agents swooped in and took them into custody. Manago was charged with trafficking cocaine and possession with intent to distribute marijuana. The case was still under investigation when the story broke, and investigations have not been forthcoming, leaving the outcome of Manago's criminal charges unclear. Number 7. Ardian Shara and Valbona Laloshi. While most Brits were hunkered down at home during COVID lockdown in May of 2020, a couple in their 40s from Tring, Hertfordshire, named Ardian Shara and Valbona Laloshi, were busy smuggling cash across international borders. They fell under investigation by the UK's National Crime Agency after their Mercedes-Benz was pulled over at the Channel terminal in Folkestone, Kent. Shara and Laloshi, who had 3 children with them, claimed that they were en route to Italy to visit relatives. They declared $6,600 in cash, which they said they planned to pay for dental treatment with, but a search of their car and belongings turned up an additional $282,000. When the excuse about paying for dental work failed to explain the amount of money they had with them, they claimed that the rest was for a property purchase. During a subsequent search of the couple's home, investigators found records detailing more than $145,000 in deposits into their bank accounts, as well as suspicious money transfers from banks in other countries. Additionally, Shara had recently bought his Mercedes with $14,500 in cash. The amount of money Shara and Laloshi were dealing with was more than 5 times their income on paper, and it was evident that they were moving cash around in an attempt to make it appear legitimate. Authorities charged them with money laundering, which they initially pleaded not guilty to. They changed their pleas to guilty 3 years after their arrest in April 2023 and managed to avoid jail time, with Shara receiving an 18-month suspended prison sentence and 200 hours of community service, while Laloshi got a 12-month community order and 50 hours of community service. Number 6. Hazar Mohammed Pani and Hubert Smolaric. In 2020, international law enforcement cracked a major encrypted messaging network that was popular among drug traffickers and members of organized crime in what was known as the EncroChat hack. As a result, numerous large-scale criminal groups were busted for their illicit activities. Among them was a gang based in Rochdale, England, that smuggled more than 117 million cigarettes into the UK by hiding them in cargo trucks, amounting to more than $47 million in lost duty and tax revenue. The gang also sent $10.5 million of ill-gotten proceeds from the sale of the illegal cigarettes to someone in Poland nicknamed Big Boss. During the first COVID lockdown, the scheme was so profitable that the participants spent hours counting money. To avoid getting caught, they hid the cigarettes in bags or hollowed out plasterboards, or obtained fraudulent paperwork classifying the shipment as food. Authorities charged 2 of the group's main organizers, 31-year-old Hazar Mohammed Pani and 41-year-old Hubert Smolaric, in connection with the operation. While raiding the suspects' properties, police recovered over $20,000 from Mohammed Pani's house and over $17,000 in Smolaric's residence. In late 2021, the men pleaded guilty to fraudulent evasion of duty and conspiring to transfer criminal property. Mohammed Pani's lawyer urged for a lenient sentence, telling the court that the defendant had accepted an offer he couldn't refuse out of a desire to support his family while living in poverty. Both he and Smolaric were both sentenced to over 7 years in prison. A third defendant, 49-year-old Maciej Zikowski, also pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 6 years and 9 months in prison. Number 5. Mirza Okanya. In February of 2024, 38-year-old Mirza Okanya was questioned by U.S. Customs agents after arriving in Miami on a flight from Havana, Cuba. After she told the agents she had nothing to declare, they searched her luggage and found $31,000 cash. An additional $71,300 was found hidden in her clothing, amounting to over $102,000, more than 10 times the minimum amount of cash that travelers are required to declare. During questioning, Okanya admitted to smuggling money from Cuba to the US 2 to 3 times a month over a several-month period. Records show that she had made 45 trips to the country since May of 2023. She said she earned between $1,000 and $2,500 per trip and admitted that she knew she was breaking the law. It's unclear who she obtained the money from or where it was going. Okanya was arrested on federal money smuggling charges. The judge released her on an ankle monitor and ordered her to undergo counseling and look for a job as her case worked its way through the court system. In August of 2024, Okanya pleaded guilty to 1 count of bulk cash smuggling and 1 count of conspiracy to commit bulk cash smuggling. She's facing up to 5 years in prison and is currently awaiting sentencing. Number 4. Cash-strapped traveler. Caught by customs. In March of 2020, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol agents at the Zaragoza Bridge in El Paso, Texas, flagged a 19-year-old man for additional inspection. He was trying to drive into Mexico, but went to jail instead after agents found $100,000 in cash strapped to his body. Hidden beneath his shirt, the cash was in plastic bags in denominations of $20, $50, and $100 bills. According to law enforcement, much of the cash shipments that get smuggled into Mexico are drug trafficking proceeds. Travelers are allowed to carry as much money as they want across the border as long as they declare anything over $10,000. But border agents have the authority to investigate the source of the money and to require its owner to prove its legitimacy. The young man was arrested, but his name was withheld from the public and the outcome of the case is unclear. Number 3. Frederick Hobson. 34-year-old newlywed Janak Patel was working as a clerk at a deli in the Auckland, New Zealand suburb of Sandringham in November of 2022 when a masked man barged into the store with a knife. Patel and his wife retreated into a back room while the suspect stole the entire cash register and some butane lighters and vapes, then left and began wheeling the machine down the road in a garbage can. Patel had taken over management of the store just days earlier, while its owner traveled out of the country. Determined to get the till back and prove that he was capable of running the business, he ran after the suspect, later identified as 36-year-old Frederick Hobson, with a hockey stick. Hobson heard Patel approaching and charged at him with the knife in one hand and a tree branch in the other, causing Patel to retreat. Instead of putting his safety first, however, Patel continued to advance toward Hobson while swinging the hockey stick. But he was no match for his knife-wielding opponent, who eventually lunged forward and plunged the blade into Patel, knocking him backwards onto the ground. Hobson proceeded to stab Patel repeatedly, while the shopkeeper fought back fiercely, and Patel even managed to break free. He began running back to the store, but only made it a few steps before he collapsed. Patel died from his injuries while Hobson calmly walked away from the scene. Police later arrested the accused killer, who had been deported from Australia just 6 months earlier after serving prison time there, and was a homeless drug addict. In 2024, Hobson was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years. He apologized for his crimes and admitted to being a lowlife and a coward, acknowledging that he deserved to be punished for his actions. Today's topic was requested by Gordon alias me 1104 and Sun God Ra. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Michelle Clark. In recent years, 42-year-old British mother of 2, Michelle Clark, fell under suspicion by the National Crime Agency of leading a more than $130 million cash smuggling ring that moved money between the UK and the Middle East for a cartel known as the Canaan Gang. According to authorities, Clark arranged the transport of large sums of illegal drug proceeds from Heathrow to the United Arab Emirates with help from business associates she recruited. While in the UAE, the owner of a gold trading company issued letters authorizing couriers to carry some of the cash to South Africa, where it was used to purchase gold. The gold was transported back to Dubai, where it was sold into the legal bullion trade. While agents tracked Clark to Dubai in May of 2023, and she was forbidden from leaving the UAE while the country's authorities conducted their own investigation. One of her mules, 44-year-old model Jo Emma Larvin, had recently been convicted of trying to smuggle $6.6 million in 8 suitcases on a flight from London to Dubai. Larvin and her boyfriend, Jonathan Johnson, were accused of making at least 83 cash smuggling trips over an 18-month period, starting in 2019, earning nearly $4,000 per trip in addition to having their travel expenses covered. They flew in business class, which allotted for extra luggage, and disguised the smell of the vacuum-sealed cash with coffee and air freshener to avoid being detected by police canines. Authorities have prosecuted at least 6 other members of the smuggling ring, most of whom received suspended sentences, while at least 2 of the couriers were sentenced to prison time. According to the most recent available updates, Michelle Clark remains a wanted woman. For those of you who haven't seen enough people looking for quick fixes of cash, then we've got more lined up. Stay tuned till after number 1, because we've got our previous release of When Shoplifting Goes Wrong coming next. Number 1. Kedria Grigsby by day. 42-year-old Kedria Grigsby worked as a cosmetology teacher at a high school in Harris County, Texas, but she lost that job in April 2024 after law enforcement uncovered evidence that she may have been moonlighting as a human trafficker. According to police, Grigsby and her 42-year-old son Roger McGee targeted runaways and other vulnerable teens by offering them a place to live and then forcing them to do things against their will for profit. During the investigation, police uncovered text messages between Grigsby and McGee discussing suspected illegal financial transactions related to the trafficking scheme. Investigators also observed the victim coming and going from a hotel room paid for by Grigsby, who could be seen picking the young woman up in a car with another victim in the vehicle. Following Grigsby's arrest, several of her students reportedly told investigators that she had tried recruiting them into her trafficking scheme. She and McGee are facing a multitude of charges, and Grigsby appears to be free on bail, while McGee remains behind bars at the Harris County Jail. Number 8. Larry D. Matthews. In October of 2016, a Georgia shoplifter was tasered, pepper sprayed, and eventually gunned down following an altercation with a Bibb County deputy in Mason. Larry D. Matthews, age 55, had been accused of stealing several items believed to include a few Bic lighters and a pack of ramen noodles from a Family Dollar store. He was confronted by Deputy Greg Usury, who gave him several verbal warnings. Matthews, a man reported as having had a lengthy criminal record, attempted to fight Usury. He was first shot with a taser, but he pulled the prongs out and continued charging the deputy. The latter then deployed his pepper spray, but it didn't stop Matthews, who reached for the can. Usury then used his service weapon to fatally shoot Matthews. Several witnesses testified in the aftermath, and an examination of the incident by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation determined that Usury wouldn't face any criminal charges. Additionally, an autopsy revealed the presence of alcohol and crack cocaine in Matthews' system. Number 7. Richard Lee Richards. In late November of 2021, harrowing footage began circulating across media outlets of a suspected shoplifter in a mobility scooter that was gunned down by an off-duty Arizona police officer working as a Walmart security guard. 61-year-old Richard Lee Richards was suspected of stealing a toolbox from a Tucson branch of the retail corporation. At about 6 p.m., an employee alerted security guard Ryan Remington, who was also a 4-year member of the Tucson police force. According to a statement released by local authorities, Remington confronted Richards in the parking lot, asking to see his receipt. In the moments that followed, the latter allegedly brandished a knife and told the security guard, "Here's your receipt." As reported by another Walmart employee who was accompanying Remington at the time, Richards had been repeatedly asked to stop and surrender the blade, which he refused to do even after a second officer had arrived at the scene. Instead, he continued circulating through the parking lot and tried to enter a Lowe's. It was at that point that Remington opened fire. As indicated by his body cam footage, he shot Richards 9 times in the back, causing him to slump over in his mobility scooter before dropping to the pavement. He then proceeded to handcuff the unresponsive man and asked for medical support. Richards was pronounced dead at the scene a short time later. Remington believed his actions, which Tucson Mayor Regina Romero described as unconscionable and indefensible, had been justified. He was fired from the police force in early January of 2022, and the shooting was reviewed by the Pima County Attorney's Office to determine if Remington would be criminally charged. Number 6. Aaron Bishop. In 2009, a man who'd reportedly stolen a bottle of perfume at the Quadrant Shopping Centre in Swansea, Wales, died following the forceful intervention of a security guard. 22-year-old Aaron Bishop was seen on CCTV at a Debenhams store shoplifting a bottle of dupe priced at around $50. Bishop had been a guardsman at Windsor Castle and a soldier with the Welsh Guard who'd reportedly served in Belize, Iraq, Northern Ireland, and Sierra Leone. Once the theft was discovered, he was chased and pinned to the ground by 4 security guards. The events that followed have known several versions, but by the time police had arrived at the scene, Bishop was already dead. Prosecutors would later argue that one of the guards, 25-year-old Sam Borden, had used excessive force and dangerous submission maneuvers in subduing Bishop. Shoppers would report hearing the former soldier begging for help and shouting that he couldn't breathe. One witness told investigators that Bishop had turned blue and was frothing at the mouth. When the bystander pointed to the security guard that Bishop was in distress, he'd allegedly replied, "He can breathe because he is talking." During Borden's manslaughter trial, he maintained that he'd been doing his job and denied applying pressure to the victim's neck. He stated that because Bishop was shouting, struggling, and behaving aggressively, he'd interpreted his claims of not being able to breathe as an attempt to trick the security guards. Borden was ultimately cleared of manslaughter in 2010 by a Swansea Crown Court jury. Number 5. Eva Pena. An off-duty police officer was arrested in Westchester County, New York, in 2019 after she was caught trying to walk away with hundreds of dollars worth of merchandise from a department store. 37-year-old Eva Pena was stopped by a loss prevention officer from leaving a Macy's in Yonkers with several items in her possession. They included a pair of Tommy Hilfiger pants, a beaded sweater, a Guess lace dress, and 3 other Guess items. Surveillance cameras had captured Pena removing the tags from the merchandise, valued at roughly $360, and then stuffing it into her purse. The authorities were alerted and she was taken into custody on charges of petite larceny. Pena, an officer in Bronx public housing, had made close to $108,000 in 2018, according to the non-profit Empire Center. She'd previously held a position as an integrity control officer, but the NYPD's Internal Affairs Bureau reassigned her, citing trouble in her own past, but didn't elaborate on the nature of said trouble. On Pena's behalf, her private lawyer pleaded not guilty to the charges stemming from the shoplifting incident during her initial court appearance. Number 4. Alicia Zabraski. A shoplifter went viral in December of 2018 after her mugshot showing her extensive facial tattoos was released online. Law enforcement was called to a Walmart in Boardman Township, Ohio, and found that 27-year-old Alicia Zabraski had been caught stealing a bag. Officers searched her purse and discovered a hypodermic needle, an orange pill, and a white rock-like substance. Zabraski admitted that the drugs were a Suboxone pill and methamphetamine. She was charged with theft as well as drug possession and taken to Mahoning County Jail for processing. Zabraski's consequent viral mugshot would show her extensive facial artwork that featured a spider web stretching across her forehead and a sugar skull design on the eyes, nose, cheeks, and lips, reminiscent of the masks and face paint used during Mexico's Day of the Dead celebrations. Prior to being arrested for shoplifting in November, Zabraski was charged with obstruction of justice following an incident in Austintown. Local police had noticed a Chevrolet Malibu running in the middle of the street at around 4 a.m. and the driver sped off upon being approached by officers. After a short chase, the vehicle turned into a home. A man later identified as Logan Doherty, who sported several face tattoos of his own, ran into the residence while Zabraski waited on the front porch. As members of law enforcement got closer to her, she allegedly told them, "I am not moving, you're going to have to get me." She then started walking towards them, indicating she had a knife, but was arrested without incident. Number 3. Lynn May May. Less than a month before she was due to get married, in the summer of 2015, a Walmart manager was killed by a shoplifter in Xianjiang, southern China's Guangdong province. 27-year-old Lynn May May confronted a man after he'd been reported of stealing food from the store. According to the Shanghai Morning Post, an undercover security worker had spotted the suspect, only identified by his surname as Li, picking up 2 boxes of snacks on the second floor. He then hid in a corner on the 3rd level and began eating the stolen food. The security guards brought the theft to May May's attention and she confronted the suspect, accompanied by several staff members. Lee then ran away, prompting the mother of one and the security guards to give chase. He fled to the store's knife department, where he grabbed a blade from a shelf as the group was closing in on him, with May May at the front. When she got within range, Lee attacked her and cut her throat open with the knife. The woman collapsed and began bleeding profusely, and one of her colleagues wrapped his shirt around her neck in what would ultimately prove to be a futile attempt to stop the blood loss. Mei was pronounced dead at the scene. The vicious attacker distracted the others enough for Lee to escape the store, but he was eventually tracked down and arrested at a nearby village. Number 2. Kieran Church. In February of 2017, a shoplifter suffered critical stabbing injuries after the bottles he'd stolen and hidden in his coat were accidentally broken in an altercation with a security guard. 30-year-old Englishman Kieran Church, who also went by the surname Hayes, was homeless and often stole spirits bottles to sell in order to support his drug addiction. On February the 9th, Church was stopped by security guard Jordan Rose from leaving a Sainsbury's in Trowbridge, Wiltshire, with bottles of brandy in his possession. 20-year-old Rose would later report that he wanted to avoid a confrontation as he'd spotted a syringe sticking out of Church's pocket. The latter returned the stolen bottles and was allowed to leave. In the afternoon, Rose was walking to a police station to hand in the surveillance footage from the shoplifting incident. It was at that point that he saw as the security guard Denise Thomas attempt to stop Church from walking away after he'd been spotted shoplifting 2 alcohol bottles from the supermarket. Rose pounced on Church from behind, resulting in both men falling to the ground, as the shoplifter was knocked to the pavement face first, with the security guard on his back. The bottles inside his jacket broke. Glass shard pierced his body, resulting in 3 severe stab wounds. An ambulance was called, but Church ultimately passed away from catastrophic hemorrhage, with the coroner recording a verdict of accidental death. Number 1. Nordstrom shoplifting incident. One of the most massive shoplifting incidents to have recently occurred in the US took place in late November of 2021 at a Nordstrom in Walnut Creek, California. It was a culmination of a string of flash mob robberies to have been reported in the Bay Area throughout 2021. The organized form of theft, theorized to have been coordinated through social media, typically involved groups of masked individuals entering retail shops or convenience stores to steal various goods. A number of police officers commenting on the November case reported to have never seen a shoplifting incident take place at such a scale and involve so many suspects. Roughly 80 individuals raided the Broadway Plaza Nordstrom at around 9 p.m. while wearing masks and predominantly dark clothing. Some allegedly used crowbars and hammers to smash through displays. One employee was pepper sprayed and at least 2 others were punched and kicked. The well-planned operation unfolded within a minute before some of the shoplifters made their getaway in vehicles that had their license plates covered. 3 people were arrested at the scene, but the authorities didn't disclose their identities in the immediate aftermath, nor did they mention the total value of the stolen merchandise. Thanks for watching. Which job occupation would you never want to do, not even if they paid you $1 million a year? Let us know in the comment section below.